All right, so you want to really get into this whole Joe Rogan interview with Trump,
Yeah.
3 hours long.
I know, it's a lot, right?
It's a lot to unpack, but
Absolutely.
I think there are some really fascinating things in here, and
Yeah.
it seems like a good place to start would be
Sure.
to focus on how Rogan handles such a high-profile guest, and
Or,
what we can learn from Trump's responses, particularly the positive aspects.
yeah, definitely. It's a unique opportunity to see him outside the typical political arena.
Yeah,
Rogan's style is so different from the rapid-fire questioning we often see, in
Yeah.
news interviews.
exactly.
There's a casualness, even a sense of humor,
Yeah,
that allows the conversation to flow in unexpected directions.
and you get that right from the beginning.
You do.
Trump actually tells Rogan, the one beautiful thing about you is that you freeball.
Oh, wow.
I don't think we've ever heard a
Not much
politician
with it.
use that phrase before,
Yeah.
but it speaks to that relaxed atmosphere that Rogan cultivates.
Exactly, and that's what makes these long-form interviews so compelling.
Yeah.
They allow for a deeper exploration of ideas and personalities.
Mm.
Rogan doesn't interrupt or try to steer the conversation too much.
Right.
He lets his guests speak their minds, and that can lead to some very revealing moments.
And it's like you're eavesdropping on a private conversation,
Yeah.
which is fascinating when it's someone like Trump who's so guarded.
Right.
And Rogan's not afraid to interject his own humor.
No, he's not.
Like his impressions of Biden shuffling around
Yeah.
or his take on Elon Musk.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like he's disarming Trump with his authenticity,
I think so.
making him feel more comfortable and open.
Absolutely. Rogan's genuine curiosity seems to put guests at ease.
Yeah.
He's not trying to score points or trip them up.
Right.
He's genuinely interested in understanding their perspective, even if he doesn't agree with it.
Yeah,
And that's refreshing, especially in today's hyper-partisan climate.
absolutely. Okay, so we got to talk about Trump's way of answering questions.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I should say not answering questions directly.
Yeah.
He has this tendency to weave, as he calls it,
Okay.
going off on these tangents that seem completely unrelated,
Right.
but then somehow he circles back.
He does.
He actually says, when you do the weaves, and you have to be very smart to do weaves, it always ends up. It comes back home.
It's true. It's a fascinating tactic.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say if it's intentional or just how his mind works.
Right.
But it's effective in a way. It keeps you on your toes as a listener.
It does.
Wondering where he's going next.
Exactly.
And it allows him to control the narrative to a certain extent.
And you can't deny that it's entertaining.
It is.
You never know what's going to come out of his mouth next.
Right.
It's a far cry from the typical
Yeah,
pre-prepared politician lingo.
absolutely.
But one thing that stood out to me is that
Okay.
despite the tangents,
Uh-huh.
Trump spends a considerable amount of time highlighting what he sees as the positive aspects of his presidency.
Yeah, he repeatedly emphasizes his accomplishments.
Right.
The strong economy before the pandemic, the tax cuts, rebuilding the military, appointing conservative Supreme Court justices.
Right.
It's a clear strategy to remind listeners of what he considers his successes.
And he doesn't just say, I built up the military. He doesn't just say that.
Yeah.
When he talks about the military, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
he talks about visiting military bases and seeing the outdated equipment firsthand.
Right.
He paints a picture of a leader who's deeply concerned about the well-being of the troops
Yeah.
and determined to give them the resources they need. It's like
Uh-huh.
he wants to convey that he was directly involved.
Yeah.
And these weren't just decisions made from afar.
It's a clever way to connect with listeners on an emotional level.
Yeah.
He's not just listing statistics, he's telling a story.
Right?
And that can be very persuasive, especially for people who already admire his leadership style.
And it's not just the military.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about negotiating trade deals like the USMCA
Right.
and how he stood up to China on trade practices.
Uh-huh.
He presents himself as a master deal maker,
Yeah.
someone who's not afraid to fight for America's interests on the world stage.
This focus on strength and assertiveness is a recurring theme throughout the interview.
Yeah.
It's a key part of his brand,
Yeah.
and it clearly resonates with a certain segment of the population.
Mhm.
He's not just talking about policy. He's projecting an image of a leader who takes charge and gets things done.
But even while highlighting these accomplishments,
Yeah.
he constantly criticizes the media,
He does.
claiming they never give him credit for his successes.
That's right.
He portrays himself as a victim of unfair coverage,
Uh-huh.
constantly battling against a biased press determined to undermine him.
This is where his tactic of weaving becomes interesting.
Yeah.
By going off on tangents about the media, he can deflect from tougher questions about specific policies or decisions. He can shift the focus to a narrative where he's the outsider, fighting against a corrupt establishment.
Hmm.
And that plays well with his base, who already share his distrust of mainstream media.
It's certainly a way to control the narrative, and to be fair,
Yeah.
he doesn't just focus on the positive.
Yeah.
He also spends a lot of time criticizing his opponents and defending himself against various accusations.
He does, and that's where things get a bit more complicated.
Okay.
He makes some pretty strong claims about the 2020 election, for example, insisting that it was stolen from him.
He brings up alleged irregularities and voter fraud, even though numerous investigations and court rulings have found no evidence to support those claims.
Right.
He even suggests that there were millions of fake ballots, which seems like a pretty outlandish assertion.
It's important to note that these are just his claims, and they've
Mhm.
been widely disputed.
Yeah.
But it's also important to understand how these claims resonate with his supporters.
He's tapping into a sense of grievance and distrust that already exists among a segment of the population.
Yeah.
And by repeating these claims, even without evidence, he's reinforcing those beliefs and further solidifying his base.
It's a reminder that in the world of politics, perception can often be more powerful than reality.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump is a master of manipulating perception, particularly through his use of language and storytelling.
Okay, so that's it for part 1 of our deep dive into this massive Joe Rogan interview with Donald Trump.
All right, sounds good.
We'll be back in part 2 to explore some of the specific policy proposals that he puts forward and how he frames them within his larger narrative.
Okay, I'll be here.
See you then.
So we left off talking about how Trump uses the interview to
Yeah.
highlight the positives of his presidency,
Right.
while also leveraging his weaving technique to kind of control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's dig into some of the specific policy ideas he brings up
Okay.
and how he presents them to Rogan's audience.
One area he seems really passionate about is trade,
Okay.
specifically tariffs.
Uh-huh.
He even calls the word tariff the most beautiful word in the dictionary,
Right.
and argues that tariffs are the key to bringing back manufacturing jobs
Yeah.
and making America wealthy again.
Okay, so this aligns with his America First economic policy.
Right.
The idea that the U.S. needs to protect its industries and workers from foreign competition.
Right.
But it's interesting, though, because he also talks about wanting to eliminate income taxes altogether.
He suggests replacing income taxes with tariffs,
Yeah,
which seems like a pretty radical proposal.
it does.
Do you think that's a viable economic strategy, or is it just campaign rhetoric?
I mean, it's certainly a bold idea,
Yeah.
and economists would likely have a field day debating its feasibility.
Right.
But what's fascinating is what it reveals about Trump's worldview.
Yeah.
He seems to see global trade as a zero-sum game,
Okay.
where if another country is winning, America is automatically losing.
He also talks a lot about infrastructure, both physical and digital,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of rebuilding America's roads, bridges, airports.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also critical of what he sees as government waste in these projects.
Right. He actually brings up the border wall as an example.
Yeah.
Highlighting how he managed to build a significant portion of it despite resistance from Congress.
Right.
And you contrast that with the Biden administration's spending on internet access programs, which he claims haven't produced results.
He loves Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And he praises Musk's Starlink satellite internet service
Yeah.
as a far more effective solution,
Okay.
highlighting the power of private enterprise over government programs.
Interesting to hear him talk about these issues because
Yeah.
they often involve a balance between public and private investment.
Right.
But Trump consistently emphasizes the inefficiency of government and the superiority of the free market.
He even gets into the nitty-gritty details of building electric vehicle charging stations,
Really?
complaining about government regulations and the high costs involved.
Mhm.
It's like he's trying to show Rogan's audience that he's a practical guy who understands the challenges of these projects.
He does this often throughout the interview,
Yeah.
delving into the specifics of building projects or negotiating deals.
Right.
It's almost like he's trying to demonstrate his business acumen
Yeah.
and contrast it with what he sees as the incompetence of career politicians.
Another area where he emphasizes strength and self-reliance is energy.
Okay.
He's a big proponent of American energy independence and argues that the U.S. should be using all of its resources,
Yeah.
including oil, gas, and even nuclear power.
He claims that nuclear power is the cleanest and most efficient source of energy, despite the risks associated with it.
Yeah, he even shares a personal anecdote about his uncle.
Oh, really?
a scientist at MIT
Mhm.
who foresaw the devastating potential of nuclear weapons long before they became a reality.
That's interesting.
Stark reminder of the complexities of these issues.
Yeah.
He seems to acknowledge the dangers of nuclear technology,
Uh-huh.
but he also believes in its potential to solve energy problems and bolster American power.
And this ties into his foreign policy views, which he also discusses at length.
Right.
He consistently emphasizes the need for America to be strong militarily in order to deter adversaries like China and Russia. He boasts about increasing military spending during his presidency
Right.
and criticizes the Biden administration's handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
He calls the withdrawal a disaster and blames Biden for the chaotic scenes at the Kabul airport.
Right.
Claims that he would handle the situation much differently, emphasizing his experience negotiating with the Taliban.
It's interesting because he actually praises the Taliban in the interview, calling them smart and tough. He even says that they kept their word during his presidency, which is a stark contrast to how the Taliban are typically portrayed.
He also mentions that he wanted to bomb the Taliban's poppy fields,
Wow.
but his generals advised him against it.
Okay.
He makes a joke about how the generals always seem to be against his ideas, but he doesn't seem too bothered by it.
It's almost like he relishes these stories of conflict and defiance,
Yeah.
reinforcing his image as someone who's willing to challenge conventional wisdom and take bold action.
You've mentioned several times that Trump frequently criticizes the media.
Yeah.
Does he offer any alternatives or ideas for how to fix what he sees as a broken system?
He doesn't go into detail about specific solutions,
Okay.
but he does express a clear preference for new media.
Like what?
Platforms like TikTok and Twitter. He boasts about his success on TikTok, claiming that he's attracting a younger generation who are turned off by traditional media.
It's a fascinating insight into how he views the media landscape.
Yeah.
He seems to believe that these newer platforms are less biased
Right.
and allow him to connect directly with his supporters, bypassing the filter of traditional journalism.
He doesn't shy away from expressing his personal opinions about various people, even some who worked for him.
Okay.
For example, he calls John Bolton, his former national security advisor, a nut job.
Wow. And blames him for getting the U.S. involved in unnecessary conflicts.
He even shares an anecdote about a friend warning him not to hire Bolton, but he didn't listen. It's a candid moment that reveals his willingness to trust his gut instincts, even if they sometimes lead to bad decisions.
He's equally critical of General Milley,
Okay.
the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, accusing him of being weak and indecisive.
It seems like he prefers leaders who are strong, assertive, and loyal, qualities he values in himself.
But it's not all criticism.
Okay.
He also expresses admiration for people like Dana White,
Okay.
the president of the UFC, praising his business acumen and ability to build a successful organization.
This admiration is interesting because it suggests that Trump values those who can build something from the ground up, those who aren't afraid to take risks and challenge the status quo. It aligns with his own self-image as a builder and a disruptor. He also continues to praise Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, highlighting their success and influence. It's like he sees them as kindred spirits, outsiders who have achieved great things despite the skepticism of the establishment.
And this leads us to one of the most intriguing and unexpected parts of the interview.
What's that?
His comments about UFOs.
UFOs, really?
That's right. We're about to enter uncharted territory, folks.
Okay.
Stay tuned for part 3.
All right.
Where we'll dive into Trump's fascinating and often bizarre theories about extraterrestrial life. So we've covered a lot of ground with Trump, from his economic policies and America First approach to his criticism of political opponents and the media.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say this is where things take a truly unexpected turn.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how Rogan, known for his open-mindedness on all sorts of topics, seamlessly guides the conversation.
Right.
From trade wars and infrastructure to the realm of UFOs and potential extraterrestrial life.
Right.
It's a testament to his skill as an interviewer, creating a space where even a former president feels comfortable discussing the seemingly outlandish.
And Trump doesn't just dip his toes in the water here.
No.
He dives right in.
It does.
Hinting at having more knowledge about government programs or classified information on UFOs than he's allowed to divulge. He even mentions a conversation with an unnamed individual.
Really?
Who described technology beyond anything we can currently comprehend.
It's like he's dangling a carrot, teasing the audience with glimpses of secret knowledge without ever fully revealing what he knows.
Right.
And of course, Rogan, like any good interviewer, tries to pry more information loose.
Right.
But Trump, ever the showman, plays it close to the vest.
He drops these tantalizing hints about objects moving at impossible speeds.
Really?
Defying the laws of physics, even drawing a parallel to Elon Musk's SpaceX program. You can almost feel the intrigue building as he says things like, I can't tell you what I know, or you'll have to find out for yourself.
It's classic Trump playing with the ambiguity and leaving the audience wanting more.
Right.
He understands the power of suggestion, creating a sense of mystery and intrigue without having to provide concrete evidence.
Yeah.
And honestly, it works. You can't help but wonder, what if he does know something?
Right.
What if there's more to these stories than we realize?
Even without concrete details, it's clear that Trump believes there's something extraordinary happening in our skies. He talks about pilot encounters with objects exhibiting capabilities beyond any known aircraft.
Yeah.
Even suggesting potential threats to national security.
Wow.
Makes you wonder, is he trying to send a message? Or is this just Trump being Trump, enjoying the speculation and attention?
This part of the interview, while light on specifics, raises some profound questions that go beyond politics.
It does.
It taps into our collective fascination with the unknown.
Right.
The possibility that we're not alone in the universe.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in an age of information overload, there are still mysteries that science and government haven't fully explained.
It's the perfect example of how Rogan, with his relaxed yet inquisitive approach, can draw out these unexpected and thought-provoking discussions.
Well, that's right.
So this has been quite a journey.
It has.
This deep dive into the Rogan-Trump interview, we've seen Trump's masterful use of storytelling and weaving to control the narrative. We've explored his policy stances and seen how he frames them within his America First worldview.
Right.
And we've even ventured into the realm of the unknown, pondering the possibilities of extraterrestrial life.
We have.
It's a testament to the power of long-form conversations.
It is.
They allow for a depth and nuance that you rarely find in sound bites and tweets.
Absolutely. And it leaves us, the listeners, with much to consider.
Yeah.
Do we take Trump's claims at face value?
Right.
Do we see his policies as beneficial or harmful?
Right.
And what do we make of his belief in UFOs?
These are questions without easy answers.
That's for sure.
But that's the beauty of it all.
I agree.
It encourages us to think critically, to question what we hear,
Yeah.
and to form our own conclusions.
That's right.
So keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yeah.
and keep learning,